Hello there and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4. This one is a unit guide for the High Culture. I'm going to analyze the roster, going over strengths, weaknesses, synergies, and a few hidden things that I hope you haven't known about yet. At the end of this video, I'm going to summarize the roster, give you a military identity, and my personal thoughts about strengths and weaknesses of this roster in a bigger picture. So let's get started with the scouts, because I love to start with the scouts. The High Culture scout is good at seeing further. End of the story. They really don't have any other perk that separates them from other scouts. So yeah, they are a weak ranged unit, and they are, in my humble opinion, not really well fit for the military service, even less than many other scouts of other cultures. These guys are really good at seeing further, and you should utilize that to the maximum extent. If I've overlooked anything, let me know. The only synergy that I figured would be pretty okay was going Shadow Walkers, which makes them scouts go for universal camouflage, invisible everywhere. But yeah, that's a pretty costly thing just for your scouts. I didn't like it either. So instead of pondering about that, let me know if you know something I didn't know, and let's get on over to those shields. So tier 1 shield units of the High Culture are really cool. First off, I want to talk about the whole unique trait of this faction. They can awaken units. Awakening does increase damage, and quite substantially, and gives access to a new trait that only High Cultures units have access to. You can enchant other cultures to have that as well, the usual. The really interesting part to know here is +4 freaking damage. These guys get, if they are awakened, the damage of a tier 2 unit. That alone is already something to know and pretty cool, but it doesn't stop there. They come with a pretty high physical resilience profile, and once they are awakened, they increase that physical a little bit more, but they also gain a smidge of magical resistance. That makes them really annoying to deal with. They have a above average damage profile once awakened and are really hard to kill once awakened. So these guys are a really good tier 1 shield unit, although oddly enough they are more offensively oriented than many other shield units that I've looked over so far. It's also worth noting that they have a really interesting spot in your roster as defense buffers. More about that once we get over to other units. Just want to mention that they can give +3 defense to all their adjacent units, and that's pretty powerful. That's really pretty powerful. So let's talk about the tier 1 archers of your folks. So without awakening, they are just bland frame. With awakening, they turn into something amazing. First off, again, 14 damage per shot. That is really brutal. But they also gain seeking missiles, which makes them shoot further and more accurately. This is a really nasty combo, because that means you have a higher chance to not hit your own units when you're taking those riskier shots from far away, when you're trying to utilize as many action points as possible. So, in a summary, these guys are really good at dealing damage for a tier 1 unit. That's really amazing what they can dish out if awakened. Without awakening, though, they are really just standard tier 1 archers with nothing special going on for themselves. But yeah, they really rip a hole through the enemies because of the high base damage. So, enough about that, there's nothing more to add. Let's get over to the tier 2 spear units of these folks. So, not only do they have an obscenely high damage for a tier 2 unit, at least once awakened, 18 damage per blow is really a nice baseline damage, because you can add your own enchantments on top of that, of course, but they also gain an extra retaliation attack, so yeah, these guys are amazing tools of zone control. Not only do they make a excellent front line, which pokes back quite heavily. Here comes again a nice synergy with your tier 1 defender. Like, use this guy for the front line and put a defender into the back line and put them into defense mode, and enjoy your spear units having a really high defense all of a sudden and poke back quite viciously. They are also very synergistic with the tier 2 supporter. More about that in a hot minute. I just want to summarize here, you have a really, really high damage zone controller, because wherever you put them down, they can use attacks of opportunity for passing by units, or a really nice front line that stabs back quite hard. So, the tier 2 priests, I like these guys. So, first off, we come here with a ranged attack that will gain another trait once awakened, and that's distracting the enemy, makes them getting flanked. So flanking is a 25% damage bonus. That's really, really a lot. I know, only applicable if the enemy isn't defending, and since this faction doesn't have shock units, it's not that easy to break defensive stances, but oh boy, this is another damage amplification just by standard attacks. But here we gain also a few nice support skills. A very strong single target heal, seriously plus 30 is a lot, plus awakening, so there's really, really nothing bad to say about that. The awakening skill is worth mentioning that it is for free, so yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So in a grand total, you got here a strong supporter, which has even a supportive option in the ranged attack. And yet again, it's worth mentioning, if you put them into defensive mode, they give all adjacent units magic resistance. So put a Dawn Defender and a Sun Priest behind a couple of Daylight Spears, and you might notice how this is starting to work. You know, it's really annoying to deal with these guys because they have a really nice defensive profile. Also, the damage that has been dealt can be really easily mitigated here with those guys. Only downside, cooldown of 2 is quite heavy, and the awakening, well, it's more like a necessity, not like a bonus. So they come, in my opinion, with only 2 effective skills. That's the only downside that I saw, if you might want to call it like that. Tier 3 unit, the Battle Mage of the High Culture, the Awakener. Just like the name implies, they can awaken, and really, really massively so. So they can awaken 2 guys at once. Again, free action, so that's really cool. They also come with the Seeking Missiles trait, the same one that the Archers got. So here you have, again, a unit that deals a lot of damage per blow, because you have to add a +4 on top of that once they're awakened, and range again. The range, man. You got 5 grids of range with your base attack, high accuracy on top of that, and you got a single target, no, not a single target, sorry, an AoE nuke here that's also debuffing the enemy. Like, what's not to like about these guys? Except for the fact that they are tier 3, hence a little bit costly and hard to recruit. But apart from that, these guys are really, really heavy to deal with. They are the flagship of your ranged damage, and they also have sort of a supporting ability due to the Twin Awakening. They are highly synergistic in any army, and I don't know. The only reason not to bring more of these is because you don't have enough frontline. But if you don't have enough frontline, these are excellent ranged units. There's also one thing that I wanted to note here. The ranged attacks of these guys deal spirit damage. A lot of units that I've met in this game aren't too resilient against spirit damage. There are, of course, because there's a resistance against everything. But this is a hidden perk of these guys. Spirit damage is not that often countered, at least in my experience not. So let's talk about the bigger picture. The High Culture is very, very powerful in their base roster, but there is also a little bit of a downside hidden in that, because you gain the ability to spread the awakening skills to your other units. I forgot which spell that was, I have too many, but no, that's not. Anywho, just like just like every other culture, you can apply these dormant traits to other units, but you might notice it's only applying to this small roster of units. Unlike other cultures, the High Culture doesn't mix too well with other cultures, because they only give the maximum bonus to their own type of unit. That means if you want to add in a shock unit, they won't benefit from special awakening traits. If you want to add in a skirmisher unit, the same problem. And this is, as a matter of fact, pretty much a problem because shock units would be an amazing addition to this roster, but they will always be a little bit subpar because of the lack of awakening traits on them. But beyond that, these guys are a solid unit that's very, very synergistic in itself and has not too many weaknesses except for its lack of variation, you know? You might have pretty much tools for every occasion in your roster, especially since you have a powerful polearm unit, you can kill off a lot of things, but you have a few deficiencies at some ends that might be capitalized upon, and they are hard to iron out, in my opinion. Of course, you can bring in summoned units and foreign units to relieve that problem to a very good extent as well, but it won't ever be the same as a high unit, you know? That's one thing, but it's a small disadvantage in my opinion. I also want to note that the alignment agenda here gives an interesting option for pure evil players, because your units will start in an awakened state when you are evil. That is really, really interesting, as it brings a powerful military advantage to your folks, but as it is currently with the game, staying pure evil is much harder than staying pure good, so that's the thing that I wanted to talk about. I personally see the high culture as a extremely powerful base frame that you can adapt, tweak, and improve on various ends, but I felt like they are really playing best with either expendable units from other factions, you know, just have that throwaway unit from summons or other cities, so you can make sure that your valuable banners don't get hurt in those really big battles. That's one thing that I saw. Or you just ignore the fact that some units are less effective than others and just add in some shock troopers or something like that into your roster, because I feel like this is a really, really cool thing. But to end with something positive, I think the High Cultures roster is amazing on its own. I think it's one of the best well-rounded packages in the game that doesn't need too much add-on from the outside. It's really good as it is, and it's very, very synergistic with any unit enchantment and race transformation thing that you want to go for. Try it out. They have a really high baseline damage, and I felt like they were really satisfying to roam around. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you feel like I missed a spot or I should really have talked about something, let me know in the comment section so everybody else knows as well, because I want to have maximum knowledge in these videos. That's my personal goal. And of course, leave a thumbs up, leave a subscription if you'd be so kind. I'd be more than delighted. And at the end of this video, I want to point at the playlist link in the description box, leading to all the other Age of Wonders videos that I did so far, the info ones, that is. Big thanks to the supporters of the channel, and if you want to find out more, check out Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee. I'd be delighted if you did, and if you didn't, well, I don't mind. Thanks for hanging out, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.